We'll get started. I'm going to just share my slides here, and we're going to go through a strategy for the reading section. Okay, here we go. So first of all, just to let you know that there are three parts, three sections to the reading section, and you have 60 minutes to complete the reading section. So you'll have 3 texts. Each text has 13 to 14 questions for a total of 40 questions. And you'll want to spend about 20 minutes for each section. So one of the things to realize about the reading section is you do have 40 questions, and you get 1 point for each correct answer. And you do not lose any points for incorrect answers. So the idea is to just get as many correct as possible. And if you're aiming for a score of 6 or 6.5 and higher, you need to get 32 or 33 correct out of 40. 35 out of 40 will get you a band score of 7. But the key is to just remember that you need to get as many correct as possible. So this kind of leads to one thing I'll just say right from the very beginning. Chances are that you're going to come across a question that you can't find the answer to. And remember, because you have a time limit, if you can't find the answer to a question, just keep moving forward. Don't panic. Leave that blank, and just remember to try and get as many correct as possible. So that's your goal. Out of the 40 questions, you want to just get as many correct as possible. Now, in the reading section, there are about 10 different types of questions. Some are very similar to other exams that you faced, but the important thing to remember is that the IELTS exam is a unique exam, so you'll want to make sure that you're clear on the strategy for each type of question that you face. We're not going to be able to look at each different type of question today. We're going to be focusing on sentence completion, but the strategies that I share with you today are strategies that you can apply to each different question type. And I would encourage you again to practice and become familiar with each question type so that you can perfect the strategy that you need for each type of question. Now, there's some very unique skills. As I mentioned, the IELTS exam is a unique exam. The reading section is unique. And I'll just point out some of the skills that you'll use in the reading section and how they're different from other exams. So the goal when it comes to finding answers in the reading section is simply to identify the information you need to answer a question. So you're not reading to comprehend everything or understand everything. You don't need to understand everything. You don't have to have any prior knowledge of the topics. So when you're preparing for the IELTS exam, it's tempting to want to try and learn about every kind of topic that you might face. But that's not a good use of your time. A good use of your time is learning the skill of identifying information in whatever type of passage that you're facing. One thing that's good to know about the academic IELTS exam is even though it's called academic, it's not academic in the sense that you're dealing with really academic subjects. Most of the subjects you'll face in the IELTS exam, and particularly in the reading section, are very common subjects. They're subjects like the environment or family, education, sports. These are all common everyday subjects, and you don't have to know anything about them before you find them on the IELTS exam, because what you're using is the skill of identifying information. I'm going to be sharing another skill with you today, and that's the difference between skimming and scanning. So just really briefly, skimming is where you go through the passage for the first time. You look at every word and read every word as quickly as you can. Again, not because you want to memorize anything or remember or even understand everything. You're skimming the passage and identifying key information, and I'll explain in a minute how to do that. And then, as you look for the answers for each question, you'll only be scanning the passage, and you'll be looking for the information that you already identified as important when you skim the passage the first time. Now, time management is an important skill, and this comes with practice. And as I mentioned, for each text that you have to deal with, you'll have 13 or 14 questions. Plus, you have to skim the passage and mark the key information, and you have to do all of this in 20 minutes. So once you've taken a few minutes, 6 or 7 minutes, to skim the passage, on average, that leaves you about 1 minute to answer each question. And what I mentioned before about the possibility of missing a question, the key component of time management in the reading section is to keep moving forward. So for example, if you've spent about 45 seconds and you still haven't found the answer to a question, it may be time to move on. It may be that you won't find the answer to that question. But remember, again, the goal is to get as many correct as possible. And so you want to keep moving and stick to your schedule, the time that you've set out for each question. And if you don't find the answer, keep moving on, because you don't want to run out of time at the end because you spent too long looking for one specific answer. And one of the other things that is going to be very important in the reading section is your ability to recognize synonyms. Synonyms are words that mean the same thing as another word, two different words that mean the same thing, and paraphrasing. And paraphrasing relies on synonyms. So you might have a sentence that means the same thing as another sentence, but maybe the sentence structure is different. It's in a different order, and maybe it uses synonyms. And this is something that you'll have to recognize. And really, this is an English language skill that is being tested in the IELTS exam. And in a future live session, I will be doing a session on synonyms and sentence structure that will help you with paraphrasing and vocabulary. So that's something to look forward to for the future. By the way, as I'm going along, if you're joining in partway through, again, don't hesitate to say hello by putting something in the comments just to let me know you're here. And also, anytime you have any questions as I go through this session, don't hesitate to put your questions or comments in the as you're listening. If you find something that was particularly helpful, or something that you hadn't thought of before, just let me know in the comments, so that when I'm doing this in the future again, I'll be sure to make sure I emphasize that if you found it particularly helpful. Okay, so those are the skills that are being tested, as well as your English language skills. And there's no getting around the fact that the IELTS exam will test your English language skills. And if you are not sure of your level of English for the IELTS exam should be a high intermediate level to advanced level. If you're familiar with the CEFR format, you should probably be at a B2 or C1 level. If you're not sure and you'd like to find out what your level is, just drop me a message or put a note in the comments, and I can help you with that. I do have an English language assessment test that I can make available to you, and if you're interested in that, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments or by sending me a message. Okay, we'll just keep going, and we're going to look at the strategy for the reading section. Now, this is just the general strategy, and I'm going to go into detail over the next few minutes, but I just want to give you an overview first. The basic strategy for the reading section, you have 3 texts, and each text has 13 questions. The first thing you want to do is that you want to start with the questions. You want to read the questions first. And as you read the questions first, that will give you an idea of what the text is about and what's the important information that you need to look out for before you even begin to read or skim the passage. And when you read when you look at the questions for the first time, the first thing you want to do is you always want to read the instructions and make sure you know the task that you're facing on the IELTS exam. So just before I go any further, I'm just going to say hello to a couple of more people. Faris, it's really good to see you from Morocco. I'm really happy that you're here as well. And Kashari, if you don't know your level and you'd like to know it, I'll send you a message, or you can send me one, and we'll see if we can arrange an assessment test for you. Okay, so you're starting to look at the questions. You've read the instructions, which is so important. And then as you look at the questions, you want to begin to look at the sentences in the questions and identify and mark keywords. And I'm going to show you in detail how to do that in just a minute, because these keywords will be the best way to find the important information that you're looking for. And then once you've identified keywords in the questions, then you will go and you will skim the passage. And as you skim the passage, and this is looking at every word, remember not to understand, not to comprehend or remember everything, but to identify important information. So what you'll do as you skim the passage the first time, you will also mark and underline, however you like to mark them, identify the key words in the passage. Then once you've done that, you will go back and start answering the questions. And this is where you simply look and try to connect keywords in the questions with keywords in the passage, and that's how you find the answers. And then as you're looking for answers, you're only scanning. Now, skimming, remember, is where you read every word and mark the key information. Scanning is where you only look at the information that you've already marked as important. And this is how you can save so much time, because you're not going to be reading every word over and over again. If you do a good job and practice and become good at it, of skimming and identifying key information, the scanning will come very quickly and you'll be able to identify the important information. Let's say hi to one more person. Chisholm from Nigeria. Really happy that we're with you. Tushar, yes, you do need to find keywords in all types of questions. And today, the specific question that we're going to look at is sentence completion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take you step by step through how to deal with sentence completion questions. And I'm using this as an example because I think it's a good example for the overall strategy and the strategy that can be used on most questions, well, all questions in the reading section. Some questions will have an extra step or something unique about them, but to introduce it in the best way possible today, we're going to use sentence completion. Okay, so first of all, step number one, read the instructions. And this is so important throughout the IELTS exam, whether it's the listening section or the writing. One of the key parts to get the marks you need in the IELTS exam is to make sure you do the task that you're asked to do. And the simple way to make sure that you're clear on this is to always read the instructions. And as you read the instructions, always underline the important part of the instructions. Or you can even make a note, comment beside the instructions. The key reason you want to underline or make a note or even put a check mark is to make sure that you haven't forgotten to read the instructions. For example, in these instructions, I underlined two important things. One is that you can use no more than 2 words. So you don't want to get halfway through the questions and say to yourself, am I allowed to use 2 words or 3 words? Because 3 words seems to be the correct answer. And then you have to, well, I better go back and check the instructions. And then you say, oh, I can only use 2 words. And that wastes time. Remember, time management is so important. So make sure you just take the time and underline and make sure you know exactly how many words you can use. Now, another important thing, and this is very important in this type of question, I've underlined from the text. So the words that you're going to use for your answers are the exact word that you find in the text. So spelling shouldn't be a problem because you're copying the word directly from the text, okay? So that's really important to make sure you read the instructions, you know the task that you have to achieve, you know how many words you can use, and you're not going to be distracted anymore as you work through the questions. Okay, so step number 1, read the instructions. Okay, step number 2, and this is where you begin to find and mark the key words. You start with the questions. Now, I haven't even looked at the text yet, okay? If I'm approaching this, I haven't looked at the text yet because it's more important to start with the questions. And as you look at the questions, it will start to give you an idea about what the text is about. So this is kind of an advantage because if you already have an idea from looking at the questions, what the text is about and what kind of information you're looking for, as you skim the passage, the text for the first time, it will actually seem a little familiar to you because you've already looked at the questions. So even though you're going through the text for the first time, there will already be things that you're familiar with, and this will help you and go a long way to helping you identify the key information. So what are key words? Okay, key words that are very important are, first of all, proper names. Anytime you see a proper name of a person or a place or even a landmark, for example, Statue of Liberty or Eiffel Tower, if you see a proper name, always mark it, because you'll find that proper names are a very good clue for making sure that you're in the right place and looking for the information you need in the right place. Proper names are a key identifier of important information. Dates are also important. If you see a year, a month, a day of a week, anytime you see a date, mark the date. Now, this next one is interesting because it's technical or unique terms. You might be reading a passage and it might be about a subject or a topic that you're not familiar with at all. And there may be words there that you've never seen before. And you might think, I don't have a clue what that word means. I've never seen it before. Here's the good news. You don't have to know what it means. You don't have to understand it. It doesn't matter if you've never seen it before, because remember, your goal is not to read for understanding or for comprehension. It's simply to find important information. And so if you see a technical term or a word that you've never seen before, underline it and mark it. It's probably a very unique word, and it could be a very good clue. Whether you understand what it means or not, it still could be a very good clue for identifying information that you need. And the thing about technical or unique terms is if they're very unique or a technical term, they're going to be the same in the questions as in the text, okay? There are no synonyms for technical or unique terms in that sense. If you see adjectives or adverbs, these are also very important. For example, let's say you're looking for a particular piece of information about, let's say, something to do with different types of buildings. So you might have, and this is a very simple example, but you might have something written about the largest building and the smallest building, or maybe an average size building. These are adjectives that describe a noun. So if you see a question like the largest or the biggest, don't be distracted by other buildings that are mentioned. You're only looking for information about the largest building. So this is why marking adjectives can be so important. And superlatives and comparisons are the best type of adjectives to mark. The biggest or bigger, one thing is bigger than another, something that is the first or the last. These are why adjectives are so important. And as you're marking keywords, again, watch out for synonyms. For example, you might see the word huge, which means very big. So you might see the word huge in the questions. And as you're going through and skimming the text for the first time, you might not ever see the word huge, but you might see the word gigantic. If you see the word gigantic, underline it in the text because it's very similar. It's a synonym to a word that you underlined in the questions. So this is how you can watch out for synonyms. So these are the important keywords that you're going to, the types of keywords that you're going to mark when you're looking at the questions and then when you skim the passage. And I just want to add one thing here. When you mark the keywords in the questions, for example, you might not see any dates or even proper names. But as you're skimming the passage, you will see them. So when you're skimming the passage, make sure you mark important keywords, even if you didn't already see them in the questions. Because when you start looking at a text, you're only going to do the first set of questions first and then skim the passage. So even though you may not have seen a word in the questions, make sure you still mark it when you're skimming the text, because you may need it for the next set of questions that apply to that text. I hope that's clear, but let's keep going, and we're going to see now how we can mark these keywords. So remember, we're working through this sentence completion. We've read the instructions. Now we're looking at the first set of questions and we're underlining keywords. Now here's some examples of what I think are important keywords that are going to help us find answers for these questions. First of all, we have von Frisch. Well, that's a proper name. Now we see discovered the difference between. Now remember, we want to mark and identify if we see any comparisons. So when we see difference between, we want to mark the two things that are being compared. Dance types and changing the position of something. And that's going to be our answer. So the comparison is actually the clue to finding the answer to the first question. And then we're going to look at the next one, and we say dance outside the hive. Okay, dance where? Dance outside. And then we see outside the hive. Now remember, we haven't looked at the passage yet, but when you see the word hive, I don't know if you are aware of what a hive is. But a hive is a home for bees, and bees are insects. So even though I haven't looked at the text and I see outside the hive, now I'm not used to the idea of bees dancing, but maybe I'm starting to get an idea, well, maybe this is something to do with bees, because I see the word hive. And we want to look for something about direction, okay, direction of something. So I've underlined direction. And then the next one, angle of the dance. Okay, I'm still not sure what this text is about, but dancing seems to be a part of it. And angle is an important word. And the angle of the dance, and then angle of the food from something. So these are some keywords that I think will be a clue to answering these questions. And now I'm going to go, now that I've marked the keywords in the questions, now I'm going to go and look at the passage, and I'm going to skim the whole passage. And I'm going to mark the keywords, names, dates, adjectives, technical terms, comparisons. I'm going to be on the lookout for synonyms, okay? So, one more thing. The other thing you want to do before we look at the passage is we want to look for other clues, okay? So this is just an extra little tip and something to watch out for. It's not It's a key word because it's a clue to the type of word that we're looking for. So I have these blank spaces that I have to fill in with a word from the text. And I notice something before each empty space. And what I see is the word the article the. So I know that whenever I see the word the, it's going to be followed by a noun. So that's just given me a little extra information for finding the correct answers to these questions. I'm going to be looking for a noun. And I know I'm allowed to use two words, no more than two words. So if I'm going to use two words, there's a good chance it's going to be an adjective and a noun, because that's the two things that go together after a word like the, after an article. So that's going to help me. I'm either looking for a noun or a combination of an adjective and noun. And that's going to help me, give me a good clue for finding the answers to these questions. Okay, so now we're looking at the passage for the first time. And I just put this note here again about synonyms and paraphrasing. Just be aware, as I've mentioned already, that you might not see the exact words that you see in the questions. You might see synonyms. And I just want to clarify something here. Your answer has to be an exact word from the text, but your clues and your keywords might not be exactly the same. Okay, the words in the questions that lead up to the answer you're looking for could very well be synonyms or paraphrases of the answers you're looking for. Okay, so here's a paragraph from the text to just give you an example. And you remember in one of the first questions, I underlined the proper name, and it was Von Frisch. Now, in the very first sentence of this paragraph, I see the name Von Frisch. So now I know that there's a really good chance I'm in the right place for finding answers. But that would come when I'm scanning. But right now, I'm just skimming and I'm marking keywords. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how many words should I mark? Well, the answer is this: don't mark too many and don't mark too few. And it comes with practice. If you mark too many words, you won't find the answer you're looking for because you have too many things underlined or highlighted or circled or marked. If you mark too many things, you won't find the answer you're looking for. If you don't mark enough words, you won't find the answer you're looking for. And this only comes with practice, making sure that you only mark words that are going to help you find the key information, those key words. So if you look at this paragraph, I marked Von Frisch because it's a proper name. I marked scent of the food, okay, because I see the word only there before. That's a key word. I'm not looking for every type of food or everything to do with food, only the scent or the smell of the food. And I remember I was marking something about dancing in the question, so I'm going to underline the third dance. And then I also remember there was something about direction and the word hive, so I've underlined away from the hive. And then moving the feeding dish further and further, that's That's comparison, and it's for when I see something like further and further. These are the kind of emphatic words and keywords that are very similar to comparisons and superlatives. Further and further. That's very important. I'm going to underline started changing. And then again, a second type of dance, because I remember I had underlined something in the questions about a type of dance. Now, I know that I'm going through this very quickly, and the good thing about if you're joining me live, you can always review and go through this again. If you're watching on the replay, remember that you can still ask your questions in the comments, and you can also say hello if you're watching on the replay. And I'd love to know where you're from, and don't hesitate to say hello, even if you're watching on the replay. Oh, here's Ferris. I'm really happy that there's something new for you. This is my goal, is to share the things that you won't always find in other things that you see about the IELTS exam. So if you're finding this helpful, if you're finding that you're seeing this in a new way, thank you for letting me know, because I'm accomplishing what I want to accomplish for you today. Okay, so now we're skimming the passage. Remember, we read every word as quickly as possible. We do the whole passage without stopping, watching out, being aware of the synonyms and paraphrasing as we mark those key words. Okay, now that we've skimmed the passage, we've marked the key words in the passage, we want to answer the first question. So we say, Von Frisch discovered the difference between dance types by changing the position of the. Now, does anybody want to put in the comments what they think the answer is? So if you're brave enough to do that before I tell you the answer, I'll give you some clues about how you would use the key information to find the answer. And then if you think you have the answer, you can put it in the comments. So Von Frisch, we know we're in the right area. Dance types, by changing the position. So we do have some things underlined. We have third dance later on. We have a second type of dance. So we know we have different types. And we notice that, okay, he's moving the food away from the hive, and he starts gradually moving the feeding dish further and further. And then the bees started changing. So he noticed the difference between dance types by changing the position of what? Okay, anybody want to try and answer this question? Feeding dish. Is that correct? Right, very good. Very good, Kishari. Okay, so you can see why feeding dish is the correct answer, because changing the position. So we have the word changing in there, but when it comes to the feeding dish, instead of the word changing, we have the word moving the feeding dish. Okay, changing the position means moving it, right? That's an example of synonym and paraphrasing. So if you got feeding dish, congratulations, you just got 1 point on your way to 6.5 or 7. Okay, let's take a look at one more question. Okay, so we've skimmed the passage. This is just another paragraph from the same passage, and we've marked some key words. For example, inner wall. Okay, inner is an adjective, so we've marked that. Oh, there's von Frisch again, the proper name. We're going to mark that. Direction of the food, that's something we saw in the questions. Inside the hive. Remember, we saw something about, I think, outside the hive, but we still are talking about a location of the hive, so we want to mark it. Direction of the sun, the hive wall, adjective and noun. Feeding place, there's feeding place now, not feeding dish. And we have, 40 degrees. I'm underlining that because it's an important number. And also I remember that we had underlined something about angles in the questions, and 40 degrees was an angle. There we have Frisch's remarkable discoveries. That's important because it's Frisch is the proper name. Remarkable discovery. Remarkable is an extreme word. It's an adjective. So we want to watch out for words like that. And we've also revolutionized. Now that's an extreme word. Revolutionize means it's a synonym for change, but not just change. It's like change dramatically or change greatly. So revolutionize is kind of one of those extreme words that you want to be aware of. So let's take a look at the question and see if we can. Okay, so we have they dance outside the hive, points in the direction of the. Okay, so what why did we underline inside the hive? So we see inside the hive. Oh, the dancer can't use the sun. But the direction of the sun, okay, means that maybe when they dance outside the hive, what can they use? The hive points in the direction of the. Anybody want to put in the answer before I show it? What do you think the answer here is? Okay, Faris, sun. Is that correct? Of course it is. Very good. And this one was a little bit easier. Okay. And because it's the exact phrase, it's not a paraphrase at all. It's the exact phrase from the text. Direction of the sun. Direction of the. I put food in there. Sorry, that's a mistake. That's a typo. It's not that I didn't know how to answer it. It should say sun. So my apologies. The correct answer, and Kasheri got it right too. I'll put sun there just to remind you. My mistake. That's a good thing to mention. Make sure you're very careful about making little mistakes like that on the IELTS exam. So that I'm just doing that to show you of an example of what not to do. It should say sun. My apologies. Okay. In this case, it's the exact phrase from the text. Okay, let's look at one more just so that I can make up for my little mistake. Now, one thing I want to mention, when you have a question that's easier to find the answer, that's kind of good news because it might help you have a little extra time for a question that's a little more difficult. Okay, so let's look at this one now. The last question we're going to look at today. The angle of the dance from the vertical shows the angle of the food from the Okay, we don't have the word angle in our uh, text, but what do you think might be the answer for this one? The angle of the dance from the vertical shows the angle of the food from the... Anybody? Sun. Now, I've obviously done something mixed up here. Let me just go back for a minute. I want to clarify this. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened, but the answer for this one is the sun. And I know that's the correct answer. So if I've confused you, I'll fix it. I'll put the answers in the comments, but I'm sure that this is the correct answer. And we'll okay, I figured it out. The answer to number 40 is the hive wall. Okay, my apologies for mixing you up, but the answer to number 40 is hive wall. Okay, the angle of the food from the hive wall. Okay, I hope I haven't confused you, but now we know, if nothing else, that it can be a little tricky. But for me, this was just a matter of typing the wrong words on the slides. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now before we finish up for today. I hope that this has helped more than it confused, especially the last couple of minutes here. But I do want you to know that with practice and with learning to identify keywords and having the right strategy, you can have success in the reading section.